How you doing, guys? Today we're gonna hopefully be finishing up on the Rugg. Got a couple little things here and there to just finish up to get it off the jack stands. Unfortunately, I did have to take a little half step back in order to get moving forward, and that surrounds the throttle. Throttle is bolted right here. Went over to the carburetor on that side. It was really stiff. It just when you actuated it, it just sounded like it was just like lathing itself. So I went ahead, pulled it off, cleaned it up again for the second time, and I lubricated the pivot, and then I lubricated down the actual throttle cable. I just used a little WD-40. It is infinitely better here on the bench, so hopefully once we get it bolted back into place, it'll be a-okay. The other thing we need to do, or what I need to do, is I need to put the breather system, or the crankcase breather system, back together on the motor. I was having just a continuous oil leak out of it, and so I just went on eBay and I got an NOS one off of eBay. I got a NOS little elbow. This is the where the breathing or the pulsating goes through the tube to the carburetor. So we'll get that together. I do have a new gasket for it. As you can see, I have a little gasket sealer. But as I'm learning Briggs & Stratton engines, okay, because I'm not a real Briggs & Stratton guy. I've basically always just done Clinton and Kohler engines. I've actually never worked on, for what, 30 plus years, I've never even worked on a Tecumseh engine. Just carb rebuilds, maybe an ignition on a Tecumseh, but very few, zero Tecumsehs. I don't work on those for the most part. Number one. Number two, Briggs & Stratton, very limited, only maybe 5 or 10 engines over the years that I've ever really worked on. So I'm learning Briggs & Strattons. The thing that I find interesting is, if you see here on the breather, there's two pieces. There's a back stamped steel piece, and then there's a top stamped steel piece, and then it's actually crimped together with 4 tabs. And then there is a gasket between the two. You can't really see it on this one. I think you can see it better on the NOS one. Yeah, there you go. You can see it better on the NOS one. You can see that little bit of gray. So the leaking of the oil might have been not because this thing wasn't sealing with the gasket against the block, but more so it was just the oil leaking out between the two halves of the breather. Yeah, this is why I don't work on Briggs & Stratton engines. Anyways, I move on. I'm sorry for my Briggs & Stratton brethren on that statement. And then the third thing we need to do is we need to get the seat cover, the original seat cover to this tractor. And that's an interesting story, and I'll let you know. I'll give you the little 411 on that in a few minutes. So let me go ahead and let me get that. The big thing is let me get the throttle hooked up and making sure it's actuating correctly in the detents, because there's a series of detents on that throttle. And then we'll go to the breather. Next up is installing the new breather system. I got the breather, I got the elbow in. I just put a little bit of WD-40 on the rubber and then just kind of twisted and kind of manhandled it into place. I took a little screwdriver just to help me push one little corner or one little squirt out of the rubber, but it's in. Everything looks good. I did put a little WD-40 on the end of that so it'll slip onto the tube a little bit easier. Cleaned everything. It should be all set to go. I also have a brand new gasket right there. We have the mounting screws. We have the nut driver all set and ready to go. If we take a look inside, this is basically exactly how it looked when I pulled the original cover off. There's a big pool of oil, not big, but a fair amount of oil pooled up right here. So I just wiped it off with a paper towel so that way it wouldn't just leak everywhere. But in general, really good. I don't see any issues. There's a little bit of white grease still left from the lifters. Yeah, this engine only has maybe 45 minutes of total run time on it, so that'll break up eventually and come off. We can see the bearing grease is basically removed from the valve stems, and they're shiny, so there's a little bit of oil that has transferred to them. So we are in good shape here. There's no signs of anything particularly wrong. So I'm going to go ahead and reinstall the breather, and we can call that part of the project hopefully done. You may have noticed during that little installation that I whacked the deck with the nut driver. And yes, I did chip it. Oh well. That, you know, people have said, oh, you should like repaint the whole tractor. And the reason why I don't repaint tractors anymore is because of that very reason. You spend all that work and then your mind just glitches a second and then you got to whack. It's not a big deal. I got it, but it's kind of upsetting because it's not even been a week or so that that's been done and it's already chipped. But the whole point is to keep it patinaed because I'm going to ride it. I'm going to use it. It's going to get scuffed. It's going to get scratched. It just happened to start the process before we took it off the jack stands. In any event, breather's installed. Elbow is installed. I was going back and forth because this elbow, because it's new, fits really tight on that little tube that comes all the way over to the Caparachi right there. That's the return line, I guess, for the crankcase pressure to go back into the carburetor. So that's all set. So we're getting there. Next up, oh, yes, the seat cover. Seat cover installed. Just cleaned it up with some Simple Green just to be gentle on it. Fits real nice. It is the original seat cover to this tractor. Now, my brother originally found this tractor behind a machine shop. I believe it was in Bloomfield, Connecticut, somewhere right around the Bloomfield area. And he was looking for Ruggs. So at the point in time, this is maybe 5 years ago, he was buying Rugg tractors every once in a while. They're actually really hard to find right now. I've been searching for another one, but really nothing's come up. But anyways, I digress. So my brother gets this tractor. He was going to restore it, ends up sitting in his shed for a couple years, doesn't want, figures out that the tractor project's not for him. So he goes ahead and he sells it to somebody up in Agawam, Massachusetts. That person basically sticks it in their shed. It sits there for another couple years. Fast forward, I rebuild an engine for my brother, and in payment, he said that he knew where the green Rugg was, because I had been asking questions about it. Like, hey, dude, where is it? What did they ever do with it? So my brother, twofold, he knew he wanted to pay me for the engine work, and he knew he wanted that original seat cover for one of his projects. So he does a deal with the guy, buys it back for the exact same price that he had sold it to, comes to my place, drops it off, but it's missing this. That's gone. And I'm like, hey man, this thing had the original seat cover on it. Where is it? And he was like, oh, well, gives me a song and dance. Well, anyways, come to find out, he did put the seat cover on a worthy tractor. It's a Lambert, which was really cool, and it looked awesome on him. But as I'm going through this project, I tell my brother, dude, I want the seat cover back. The deal was for the tractor. And he was like, oh, yeah. And I said, I know you have it. It's on the Lambert. Take it off and give it to me so I can put this particular tractor back to the way it was. So, being brothers, you know, bantering back and forth, eventually, and I say eventually loosely, it wasn't like it was a big deal. He was like, yeah, all right, whatever. It does deserve to go back on this little mower. So that's how I got it back. Cleaned it up, as you can see, put it on the tractor. It's time, finally, after all these months and 17 versions, 17 parts, let's get this thing off the jack stands. Back on the stands. Well, I took it out. I couldn't get it started. For whatever reason, it wouldn't start. I finally got it started. Was running good. Well, I tried to get it started. I got so frustrated I turned the camera off. Finally got it started. Took it around, you know, in front of my house for a quick ride. Multiple issues. I'm just so frustrated. I had to walk away from it. One of the issues is the blade engagement doesn't work. Nothing has changed except for me putting the deck on. So as you can see, I've taken the deck off. And here's part of the reason why I don't restore tractors anymore, because, you know, taking the deck off, you know, butchered I want to say the F word, but butchered this, butchered that. You can see the belt material is just amazing. So something's out of whack. And this thing fell on my face. So I'm like super happy about the outcome of all of this. This has been a very joyous time so far. But let me show you what's happening here. Let's move on. I digress. Sorry. All right, so when we look at the blade engagement here, I showed you in a prior video that it worked. So I'm going to just grab the handle here and I'm going to engage it. The pulley doesn't move anymore. The blade brake doesn't come off. It's like, okay, what the hell happened? What is different now? As you can tell, I'm just frustrated. It's like everything that I've done is coming apart slowly but surely. So I have no idea why this is not moving anymore. Only thing I could surmise is this bolt here somehow, some way got tightened up. But the only thing that changed since the time I showed you in the last video, me putting this together, is I put the deck on. The deck has nothing to do with any of this. I don't know. All right, well, I'm going to have to take this apart, I guess. It's unfortunate that the new paint on the deck has taken such a beating. When I was taking the deck off, if I thought I had it in my hand, you know, controlling it, I didn't. It slipped. It smashed me in the face, so I have a red mark on my cheek. And as you can tell, one of the screws took a gouge out of it. Screw took another gouge out of it. So unfortunately, it is what it is. You know, yeah, well, move on. Now, what you just saw was me testing the blade engagement. It works without the deck on. I just took my hammer and I tapped the actuator, and it boink, it just went right into, you know, it went right into position, tightening up the belt. So I started it up, turned it on, turned it off a couple times. It works fine. I'll put it back on the. I'll put the deck back on, and we'll see what happens. Hopefully I can do this without losing an eyeball or chipping a tooth. With the blade working, we're good there. I also straightened out one of the tires. This tire, I guess, when I bolted it on, wasn't like centered on the axle, so it was kind of going the boop, the boop, the boop, and so fix that. What else did we do? Oh, it is leaking a little fuel out of the carburetor right at the base here, so I'm gonna have to take a look at that. I mean, other than tearing the whole thing apart, but for right now I'm gonna leave it, but I'll watch it and see if it gets any worse. The other thing too I noticed, because this side of the tractor was facing my car, I never really noticed, but there was some fuel weepage all along, I can feel it, all along the base of this tank. I'm hoping this thing doesn't have a weepy leak in it. It's mint clean inside, so I don't understand why it would leak, but if that's the case, then we're definitely going to have to take the engine out to do it, which really sucks, but I'm going to watch it for now. Let's see what happens. Today is my wedding anniversary, and the wife has asked to do something, so in the next scene will be a different day, and hopefully we'll be riding this thing. It's a few days later. I was hoping to have a riding video, but as you can see, that ain't happening. What transpired is this. I got the engine started, was about to do the video. I noticed that there was a little bit of smoke coming from the motor itself, from underneath it, and I diagnosed it as just a little bit of oil on the bore, so it was just kind of burning off. Nothing big. It wasn't coming from the exhaust. So I said, the heck with it. Let me just get that cleaned up. So I turned the engine off, cleaned everything up, located where the oil leak is. It was just a little gasket. It was nothing big. So I fixed that. Go to start the engine, and literally the recoil rope snapped. So that stopped everything. I was like, really? I've since fixed it, and I'll show you that probably in another video. But fixed. So the recoil rope snaps, but that necessitated taking the half the steering shaft stand off, and obviously the hood, in order to get the blower cover off the engine. When I did that, I noticed how bad the fuel leaks were. The tank was pretty much weeping pretty good right out the bottom edge here. So this crimp must be compromised, even though the tank is super nice. I mean, it's super clean inside. You know, there's no crashes in it, but you know, that's what happens with time. And then also the base gasket here for the carburetor was leaking. I didn't know this, but it was weeping out the back side quite bad. There was a pretty good like amount of fuel sitting on the outside of the tank right here and up against the bore tin on the motor. So I'm like, oh dear God, I need to address that. So I went ahead and pulled the tank off. As you can see, I ordered up some new gaskets, or a new gasket for the carburetor, and then I went on a hunt for a gas tank. And my brother was actually lucky enough to find me an NOS gas tank that somebody was willing to sell me fairly cheap. When I say fairly cheap, like a third of what I'm seeing them brand new. You know, NOS tanks were like $125 to $150 I could find. I paid a fraction of that. So big huge thank you to my brother, and big huge thank you to the individual who sold the tank. Really do appreciate it. So once I get the tank, I'll have to paint it because it's just etch primed. It's bare metal. I'll need to etch prime it and then paint it a color. That I'll take this carburetor, just take it right off and drop it right on, because all the settings on this carburetor I think are dialed in. So I'm real happy about how that's working out. But I have to wait for the base gasket, and I have to wait for the gas tank before I can put it back together. I do need to clean that air cleaner. I got way too much oil in the foam, so I need to take that apart and clean it all up. Because I need to take two of the head bolts out in order to get the gas tank off, I said, why don't I just pull the head and take a look at what's going on, because I'm going to need to, retorque and possibly even put a new head gasket in it anyway with the tank off. So that's exactly what I did. I went ahead and pulled the head to take a look at anything that we might be running into a problem with. I'm just going to move that ignition wire over, and I'll just turn the engine back. And when we take a look inside, I don't see any issues. The hone is still there. There is a little bit of a line right here going back. I don't know if I could show it to you. Yeah, right there. It's not a groove. It's just a line. If I take my nail, I can't even feel it with my nail, so it's fine. If we look down the bore, the piston is fine. It doesn't rock around. You can't see that dark edge is actually the little bevel of the piston. You can't see the rings or anything, so that made me really happy. So that's all looks really good, and you can see that bevel right there. It's just causing a shadow, but it's super tight in the bore. It doesn't move on this side. It doesn't move on the bottom, so that all looks good. This valve is cracked open a little bit, but this one, actually, excuse me, both of them are cracked open right now because this is at the just about when the intake valve opens up, so it's doing its theoretical scavenging between the two. But the valves seat perfectly. They're real tight on the seats, so that's part of the reason the rope broke, which was the compression on this thing is pretty gnarly. When I pull the rope start, if it's on the compression stroke, if I don't pull it fast enough, I can actually lift the tractor, half the tractor, up off the ground. That's how tight the compression is. So real happy about that. I'm going to ditch all of the original head bolts. They've obviously been heat cycled too many times. So I went to the hardware store and bought some brand new grade 8 cat bolts. I also went ahead and bought a brand new spark plug. Not that there's an issue with the original spark plug. It looks fine. This was brand new, but I just said, you know what? We're going to do it fresh. And I have a new head gasket downstairs already. So with that being said, I do have to wait for the parts to come in. I'm hoping they'll be in within the next 3, maybe 2 or 3. I'm hoping 2 or 3 days, but probably more like 4 or 5 days. And I'll be in a position to get this thing all back together, and we'll finally get this thing on a final ride. All right, guys, thank you very much for hanging in there. I know this project's been going on a little longer than I anticipated and probably you hoped, but I do appreciate all of your viewership, all of your nice comments. Please like, share, and subscribe if you could, not you should. You should not have to do anything, but if you could, that would be greatly appreciated. And this is all with the goal to get a 1965 Rugg carpet cut back up and running and reliable. Right now, not so reliable. All right, you have a great day. Thanks.